What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Facts on the Ground. I am Misty Winston, joined by my co-host Jesse Zerwell. Today, I'm very excited. We have somebody who just recently helped co-host or co-organize whatever one of the End the Damn Wars protests, and she was just recently on a vigil too, and that's where I got to first speak to her, and she was amazing. So we decided to have her on. She's the second vice chair of the Libertarian Party in Arizona and also the communications director. And so Lauren Liberty, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on. It was really great getting a chance to talk with you the other day. So I was really happy to have another opportunity to chat.
Yeah. So, okay. The reason really I wanted to have you on is because I'm kind of like Magnus in the sense that like I am ready and willing to work with whoever, Greens, Libertarians, progressives, even if you're willing to throw down, let's go. And I think you kind of on the vigil, we're talking about how you're trying to facilitate that sort of environment in Arizona. So can you talk a little bit about that and like what kind of reception you've been getting to that idea?
Yeah, for sure. So that is definitely something that for me, I believe we can achieve a lot more through unity and working together towards a common goal rather than just fighting against stuff that's not going to get anything accomplished. And in Arizona here, the AZLP has historically worked with the Arizona Green Party. It's been a really long time since we have. Probably, I want to say the last time was about 2007. And one of the things that we really worked on was ballot access, because here in Arizona, they're really, really shady about ballot access for third parties. So it was really cool to have an opportunity to work with them again. They actually reached out to me about the End the Damn Wars rally, and that has really sparked a really just open line of communication and talking with each other. And I actually was just talking with Colette Jennings, who is one of the co-chairs of the Green Party. She also spoke at the rally. I was on a Zoom call with her yesterday for like 3 hours, and we were just talking about other things that we can work towards. And we had also our chairwoman from the AZLP. She joined us for a little bit. And then we had another friend from Texas who is kind of, doesn't really identify as any one political party, but has similar ideology where it's like, yeah, we all need to work together towards ending wars. And it's just so many other issues. That's just the top one that's been the most recently talked about, but we had a whole laundry list of things that even just here specifically in Arizona that we can work towards, like issues on the border, immigration, how there's still migrant families in cages at the border as we speak.
There's more.
Yeah. So there was actually a lot of things that, as the more we got talking, the more I was like, oh, wow, I think we actually could have a lot of things that we can work towards together. Right? So it's pretty incredible.
How long has the AZLP been around?
50, so almost 50 years. I want to say we're 49 years. The LP in general just had hit 50, and I want to say Arizona was established shortly thereafter, so in the 70s.
Yeah. And I love that you guys are like reopening lines of communication, because I think it, like, as you were saying it, I giggled a little bit because it sounds so ridiculously rational. Like, hey, we agree on doing this thing that's really important, ending the wars. So let's do that.
Weird concept, right?
I know, and but it sounds so silly, but it's so difficult to get people to agree to do. It really is. It's so weird. It's really bizarre. So that's I was like, I just giggled, and I hope that wasn't offensive. That's why I was giggling, because it really does sound so ridiculous.
It seems like it should be common sense and a no-brainer, and that everybody should be on board with it, no matter who you are. But there was a lot of resistance of especially as far as I have been told within the Green Party, of working with us and working with anybody associated with the Boogs. So it's still a huge point of contention. And it's also, a lot of it is spawned by just misunderstanding. And, just not, you think that all Boogs are these, alt-right crazy people, and they're not. Just, have you ever stopped and talked to one? That's,
the propaganda has been very effective, though. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they're very good at constructing a narrative around these groups, however they want. And like, I'm not saying that all Boogaloo boys are good. Of course they're not. There's going to be there's terrible leftists. There are terrible. You know what I mean? Like I'm like somebody who likes to look at people like on a individual level, first of all. But second of all, the group isn't even like, there's everybody like has this weird like comic book villain type group mentality about this, and there a lot of them are just like anarchist hippies. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's
they're very much decentralized.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
a lot of people like to act like they're operating out of some Politburo or that they have some sort of bureaucracy behind them pulling the strings, and they can't wrap their heads around the concept of a decentralized political movement.
Oh, yeah. And that's something that we actually talked about quite a bit yesterday as well, is that how decentralized the book movement actually is. And to your point, Missy, there's going to be bad people anywhere. That's just human nature. But if you give somebody the chance as an individual and don't just automatically assume they're one way because they associate with some sort of movement, and you don't even give them a chance to prove anything other than what you automatically assume they are, you're not going to ever get ahead in life, and you're not ever going to be able to work with people.
Yeah. No, because I'm friends with Magnus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you known Magnus?
A little while through Twitter. Like I followed him on his old account, and then I know he had to get a new account and stuff. So super, it's been an adventure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cause I met him very shortly after he did Jimmy Dore. We had him on the show. And just from that, like just talking to him, it's very apparent that he's not a Nazi. You know what I mean? Like people are saying that Magnus is a Nazi, and he's not a Nazi. Like if you just speak to him or listen to him speak for 5 minutes, that's very apparent. And there's still people who will say that he's a white supremacist, that he's a Nazi, that he's, some kind of crazy alt-right infiltrator. And it's really, but that's how they keep us divided. And, they're very good at it. It's very effective.
Mostly done to shut down a conversation that very much needs to be had between people of different political backgrounds. And it's effective because once you compare somebody to a Nazi or to Hitler, it's Godwin's law, as they call it. And it ends the argument there, because if you're accused of being a Nazi or a Hitler sympathizer, what can you say in response? How can you rationally win an argument? And that's a tactic of fear, of division, and we see it all the time. And unfortunately, it sticks for a lot of people, and that's problematic. And how we overcome that, I don't know, but that's out there.
We have to overcome the narrative. We have to overcome. That's why I say, like, I know it sounds overly dramatic, but I really believe that narrative control is kind of the front line for everything, because they control us through propaganda. And I know that sounds like tinfoil hat, guys. I get it. Like when somebody says that, but that's reality. Yeah. They 100% control. They manufacture your reality, our reality, through what they choose to tell us, how they tell us. I mean, come on, we really are the most propagandized country on earth.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And people fall for it 24/7. And kind of to the point that you're making, Jesse, I completely agree with you that keeping that division is the way to keep people from working together. Because imagine how much more powerful we would be if we did band together on those issues that we do truly, genuinely agree on. And furthermore, the easiest way to discredit somebody, especially now, is to say that they are racist or bigot or whatever. And really, what can you say to come back at that? It's just once it's basically, cancel culture. Once you're canceled, how do you really come back from that? You can't say, well, I'm not a racist, I have a black friend. Like, no, now you're just doubling down on it. Like, there's really no way to come back from it. So if somebody can make those allegations against you and that catches wind, that's it.
Yeah, and they're very effective at doing that. I think they just
Yep.
repeat that shit over and over again. And it's amazing the links that they will go to discredit people. You know, and it like I'd say all the time, I think Magnus is one of the most misrepresented people on Twitter. You know,
Agreed.
yeah, it's a really weird phenomenon, honestly. And I mean, obviously I'm biased because I like Magnus. I consider him a friend of mine. But yeah, it's really weird to watch people talk about him as if he's, you know, some crazy alt-right, like wants a race war.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not accurate in any way, but these smears are very effective. You guys are totally right.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
They're
think
very
it
effective.
points to a larger problem that people don't want to leave the safety of their political or partisan bubbles. They feel insulated. Like I said, they feel safe, and they can trick themselves within those bubbles to feel like they are making some sort of progress or are pushing back in any meaningful way. And they're really not, but it keeps metastasizing, and Twitter's not very good at providing a solution for that. I think Twitter has a lot of utility, but it's also a breeding ground for that type of mentality to stay in your bubble, stay in your herd, and constantly reassure yourself that you're correct, you're on the right side of politics and history. And again, that's not something I'm sure how we overcome, except to keep pushing back and to say fuck you to the people who are trying to suppress our voices or any sort of meaningful action that we're trying to
Or
carry
any
out.
dissent whatsoever. Any
Mhm.
dissent whatsoever. That's what terrifies me, is that they are legitimately squashing any and all dissent of, and you know what I mean? Like it's bad. It's bad. We've really let it get to a place where it's bad, the way that the censorship has been allowed to take hold. It's crazy what they can do. Like just wipe somebody off. They wiped a sitting president off the internet entirely.
Yeah.
Entirely. A sitting president. And I don't even, stop it. I'm not a Trump supporter. Don't fucking come for me. I hate that shit. No, of course I like Donald Trump's an absolute douche canoe. I shouldn't have to say that. But him being taken off of the internet entirely, a sitting president, that's not good.
And
I
the amount of people
cannot
that
say-
celebrated.
Oh, yes. Oh, I can't tell you how bad that is. That's not good. That's not good. If they can do that to y'all, that's not good. I don't know why I have to say that. It really is frustrating to me that people don't see why that's a really bad idea. You know?
Yeah. And aside from the censorship, the blatant censorship that's involved with that, it's such a childish point of view that so many people who support that have. They'll go back to the argument of, well, he's tweeting all the time. So what's wrong with that? He's putting out information that a president normally puts out through Twitter, which is used by millions upon millions of people. And it was by no means the only platform he was using to put out information regarding his administration or things related to it. But people pointed that, people who are on Twitter all the time will point to that and say, look how childish, look how unpresidential. And then on top of that, like Misty said, they're exuberant that he's been banned from it without seemingly to even have a hint of the implications of that for them, for their personal expression.
That's why they do it to people who are universally despised. That's why they started with Alex Jones. He was universally despised. And I mean, they didn't start with him, but that's like one of the biggest steps that they took. But they always start with the universally despised. And Trump had enough people hating him that, you know, that worked for them. And now people will cheer that on, which means they're allowing it for themselves. It's going to come for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's going to blowback because Trump's going to run again for 2024. And
Do you think?
He's going to be able to leverage that censorship in a huge way to gain support from the base he already has, and maybe even grow the base he already has. Because a lot of people, even people who don't use Twitter or don't use social media, see that for what it is. It's not hard. It's blatant censorship. And
can I just say, though, if he runs in 2024, I'm going to eat him alive on Julian Assange. I will fucking come for you, dude. And every time you talk about fake news, I'm going to be there to remind you of what you did to Julian Assange. I'm going to haunt you, dude, every time. Seriously.
I'll be honest. I don't think that the Republicans, I think he's going to try to get the spot. I don't think he'll win the primary.
I don't know that he will run, honestly. We'll see.
I think the ego is there
Yeah.
enough that he will do it and that's one thing that, like, some of the shit that he does is funny. Like, he is a troll. And that's not necessarily a quality that you want in the president of your country, but some of the shit he does, I'm just like, oh my God, he really is like a high level troll. He's got the money to fund it. I think that even just to make people mad, he will run. I do think he will be campaigning. This is just me throwing a guess out there. I don't think that the Republicans will choose him as their candidate. I actually have a pretty strong suspicion it's going to be Ron DeSantis, but that's just me making a prediction. So I do think that he will run. And I do think that is going to be a good opportunity to remind him of all the bullshit, because I had people tell me, oh, Donald Trump is the most libertarian president we've ever had. Shut the fuck up. Don't even come at me with that. Why? Because he said like one thing about being fiscally conservative? No, I don't want to hear it. He then went on to sign 2 of the biggest spending bills in American history. Don't even. So I think it's a really important opportunity to remind people that, like, nah, this isn't the answer. Like, just because you're still playing into the lesser of 2 evil things, and that's what, every 4 years, that's what we get roped into.
Yeah, well, and it's not even that he's who cares if he's the most libertarian? He has no ideology. His ideology is
money.
Oligarchy, just money. Just no, I mean, like they all are owned and operated by the exact same people.
Yeah,
like there's no there, you know what I mean? So they're making decisions based on whatever their donors want. They're owned, all of them, and they're owned by the same people. There's some variances, like big oil is kind of more Republican leaning and big tech is more Democrat leaning or whatever, but they all go to the same parties.
Yeah.
Their kids go on vacations together. Like, what was it? Joe Biden's granddaughter and Donald Trump's daughter were on vacation together.
Yeah. It's 2 sides of the same coin. I find myself saying that quite often, and people really don't believe it.
They're putting on a show, right? Yeah. Controlled opposition.
Yeah, when we're seeing it now more than ever, not just with the presidency, but with Congress, for example, AOC at the Met, it's pure theater, and pure theater in the vein of Versailles, like before the French Revolution.
Yeah.
It's champagne socialism at best. And on top of that, as Glenn Greenwald has pointed out, as Jimmy Dore has pointed out, you have the masked servant class serving these people.
Sweet Jesus, that's creepy.
At their event, which could not get any more
ridiculous,
ultra capitalist. I don't think you could come up with something more ultra capitalist than that. I mean, Anna Wintour is like the consummate backstabbing, disgusting.
It's just a ridiculous spectacle, especially now.
I've seen her in person, and she is as every bit repugnant in person as she is.
And by the way, she has to approve every design. So this was approved by the people throwing the thing. Her dress was pre-approved before. So this isn't like, and you don't get invited to these things if you are a threat
Yeah.
to the system. You
Yeah.
don't get invited. I'm so happy. Somebody tweeted today an old video of Jeremy Corbyn, where they're like, he's like being interviewed by the media, and they're talking about how one of the other MPs said that he dressed like he didn't dress well, and Jeremy Corbyn's like, it's not a fashion show. Like, I'm here to just I'm not here to go to like he's like, it's my job. It's like my responsibility to turn down those invitations to go to these dinners and these parties. And I'm not here to like, and he had a sweater on, or a vest as they call it, that his mom had knitted him.
That's so sweet.
And I love it. So I loved, like, I am angry with Jeremy Corbyn. But I am also like, I'm a fan of Jeremy Corbyn's. I think he's a legitimate dude. You know what I mean? Which is my starting point for everybody. And he walks the walk, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The campaign to railroad him out of labor was just
disgusting.
nonstop.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody could have overcome that.
No, I wanted to ask you though, because do you have in libertarian land, is it like, do you deal with the same bullshit drama that we deal with on the left? With like the AOCs and the kind of managerial class, you know what I mean? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
I think maybe not as on grand of a scale, because we don't have that many libertarians sitting in positions. So there's not quite as much, but there are larger figureheads, and there are people who, have like Justin Amash, and it's sort of one of those things where nobody's ever libertarian enough, right? So it's that's the thing. Nobody's a real libertarian, and I always like to say, like, libertarian women don't exist. Like, that's a big thing too. There's a lot of just
really that's a thing.
Oh, that's a huge thing. Yeah. So I always play into that. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not real. And I just kind of look at it like, I just laugh, because there's so many bigger things that we could really be talking about that are way more important, that are happening actively as people are infighting about stupid shit that doesn't matter. So there is a lot of that. That's one thing that also I notice a lot of it is mostly internet culture. A lot of it is just like, and people on the internet are toxic, and there's a lot of trolls and fake accounts, and even people that are sent in to infiltrate movements too. That sounds like and I always say it's like a tinfoil hat thing, but it's real. That really does happen
all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And all it takes is one tweet to go viral, and it makes, there was a tweet about, oh my gosh, what was it? Child labor or something that
I think I remember that, where it was like some small like libertarian party somewhere
like
in like some tiny town.
Yeah.
I remember that. Okay.
Oh God, we're still having people come at us about that. And I'm like, bro, first of all, Arizona didn't even say that, but also the thing is too, saying things that are extreme to sort of get people's attention, which I get it. It works to an extent, but then it also really bites us in the ass for like a long time afterwards.
Yeah, that's why I don't like labels. I don't like labeling myself, because I like I'm never going to agree with anybody, any party, any group all the time. I don't even agree with myself all the time. I say that all the time. Like, I don't agree with I'm constantly like taking in new information and like adjusting my vision, and you know what I mean? Like, it's so I hate labels. I understand why they're sort of necessary, because it gives you like a place where you can congregate and join forces, because there's strength in numbers. But at the same time, it seems like they're always just used to like divide. They're always co-opted. I mean, shit, Nancy Pelosi is calling herself a progressive. Like, that's weird. Like, that's like a thing that she gets away with doing. AOC, to some people, is considered left.
Yeah. Well, aren't they pragmatic progressives now?
Yeah, even Bernie Sanders, I think. And Our Revolution is like, dude, the left is a fucking joke. That's what
they've officially rebranded themselves as.
Like, AOC went from Medicare for all to funerals for some. Like, that was the progression there. Like, she's now like willing to maybe get you some money on your funeral if you died of COVID, but only it's means tested. So only some terms and conditions may apply. You know what I mean?
My gosh, you got to
Yeah.
read the fine print after you die, right?
Yeah. So it went from Medicare for all to funerals for some. Like that's been her transition. And people were still cheering for that shit. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I get pissed off about this dumb stuff.
No,
Well,
you're right.
Well, Lauren, let me ask you, as far as labels go, because it seems like there's still a lot of confusion with regard to what constitutes libertarianism. So at least for you, I'm not asking you to speak for the whole party, but for you, what does libertarianism mean?
Yeah. So I do often refer to it as a spectrum because there is a huge spectrum of ideologies and points of views and beliefs within the Libertarian Party. And that's part of what makes it great, because you do meet so many different people. And it's also part of what makes it really difficult, because you have very radicalized people on one end and the polar opposite on the other end. So for me personally, I being from New York, originally a Democrat, it's blue no matter who up there. Like, that's just it. Generation and after generation, you vote Democrat, you don't even ask. So for me, I registered Democrat. I voted for John Kerry in the first election that I was ever able to vote in. And as somebody that had just turned 18 and recently gained the right or the privilege to vote, I kind of felt shitty about it, because I was like, I don't really like this guy, but I just voted for him because he wasn't Bush. And very, very early on, I was like, well, that sucks. And that's not cool. I don't like that feeling. I really felt like I was like, what the hell did that accomplish? I didn't feel good about voting for this person. And then also for me being like a queer person, I also am very focused on like social issues. So, you know, civil rights, civil liberties, equality, you know, gay marriage. Like, I remember when me and my ex-girlfriend were together, that was when like gay marriage was finally legalized in New York. And that was a huge freaking deal. But somebody had told me, because I also was super like pro Second Amendment. And I was like, yeah, I mean, people should have the right to carry if you want. And it's damn near impossible to get a carry permit in New York. So that sort of radicalized me on that idea, where I was like, well, why the hell can't I carry a gun? What if I want to protect myself? And somebody that I worked with was like, you should check this out. And he gave me a book that's a really random book that not a lot of people read. It's called The 5,000 Year Leap. And it's about how the government was intended to run, and the Constitution, and it has a lot of very, very religious undertones to it. But it helped me really, as a young person, understand how the government was supposed to have been run. And even though it was written, I want to say in like 81 or 83, I was reading it 20, you know, or however many years later, and it still was so interesting to see how far the government has strayed from how it was supposed to be run. So that was when I got into the Libertarian Party, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, they're fine if you're gay, and they're fine if you like guns. Sweet. I think this is probably where I belong. And that was 2008. And so I'm still involved, obviously, in the party, more so now as time has gone. There was a really long period of time where I did step away from the party. There was, gosh, probably like 2010, 2012, there was a lot of like pedophiles and racists and bigots, and just people saying all these really, really horrible, hateful things, mostly online. It was never anybody in person, of course. And I was like, well, I don't want to be a part of this. Like, I'm not okay with that. That's really like, these people don't belong in this group. And I was called an asshole and told that I wasn't a real libertarian because I didn't support these people's right to feel however they want. And I'm like, no, they can feel however they want, but I just,
I'm not associating myself with them.
They can't sit with us. Like, I'm not okay with it.
You know what drives me crazy? Because that happens all the time, because I'm a free speech activist. Like, I'm press freedom. That's my thing. And so I'll block somebody on Twitter who's like abusive and like stalks me, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you don't believe in free speech. And I'm like, no, you're still free to say whatever the fuck you want. I just don't have to listen to you. That's not an infringement of your rights, fam. You can still do whatever the fuck you want. If you want to still, like, you know, but people do that all the time. They act as if their rights have been infringed on
Oh
something.
yeah.
So, you know?
Oh yeah. It was really, really bad then. Like I was actually ostracized for speaking out against people who, you know, were talking about age of consent and all that shit. And I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm not with it. That's not okay.
Yeah, that's a weird topic right now.
Yeah, there's no room for people like that in our party. It's literally written in our platform, consenting adults. There's no way around it. There's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't accept it. I don't, like you said, you can say whatever you want. I'm not listening to it and I'm not associating with it. And for me, it really becoming re-involved in the party within the last few years and actually seeing like there's the Libertarian Wood Chipper Caucus and their whole thing is like all pedophiles should be put into a wood chipper. And I'm like, cool, yeah, I'm down with that. So that's when I was like, yeah, I could fucks with that. So seeing that people are actively calling out stuff like that is not okay, kind of gave me the sort of desire to become active within the party again and to know that there's other people that feel the same way that I do. Like you can feel however you want. I personally think you should die a slow and painful death because of it, but you can do whatever you want as long as you're not harming any, you know.
Right.
Say what you want.
Yeah.
But as soon as you harm somebody else,
Yeah, I think that's not just particular to the Libertarian Party. That's anybody with a conscience thinks that way.
Yeah, I mean,
but I can see and I have seen how issues, for lack of a better word, like that get
Weaponized.
Weaponized, but forced into I don't want to say a niche, but in this case, a niche of the Libertarian Party. And then it becomes obviously a dividing point where you're either on one side that's based on common sense and decency and also science. There's plenty of scientific literature that informs age of consent laws, or you're on the other side, which is like trying to revive NAMBLA or something. I don't quite understand it.
Right.
Yeah. And that's been like there's been a huge push for that lately. Like over the past, I don't know, 2 to 5 years, I've seen this fight has been increasing, and it's really disturbing. Like it's really disturbing. I don't even know, honestly, because I have kids and I'm like sitting here this shouldn't even be like a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
You know
I agree. It's sick. And it's why I took a big step back from the party, because we are the Libertarian Party and it's, you know, all of your freedoms all the time. Well, those people try to hide out within the party and try to turn our own principles against us, kind of like you were saying about free speech. And it's really tough and it's exhausting to have to combat that all the time and to automatically be associated with that. For me, as somebody that is a libertarian, and I'm like, you know, I've gotten into fights with people where I'm like, fuck you. Like I was molested as a child. Do you really think that I would support an entire political ideology that is pro having sex with children? No, fuck you.
Yeah.
It really pisses me off. I don't have kids, but I feel very strongly about it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, as anybody should. And let's not forget that the president right now is a serial groper and rapist.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's endemic to the Libertarian Party. It's every
people in power,
political
period.
Party.
People in power, period. Power attracts the worst among us. These are psychopaths. They're all, y'all. I know that it sounds conspiratorial, and I know that Pizzagate, they made this whole Pizzagate thing where now if you bring up the fact that there's a real pedophilia problem in elite circles, you're labeled as a conspiracy theorist, but that's just reality. I mean, what more proof do you need? Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, like there's What more evidence do you need that this is, I mean, if you've ever seen the movie An Open Secret, it's a documentary about the pedophilia issue, and like the way that kids are like brought to parties, Hollywood parties, but it like exposes the pedophilia in Hollywood. Like we know that this happens. And so it really pisses me off that they have managed, sorry, this is a bit of a tangent, but it really pisses me off that they were able to use Pizzagate to trivialize this issue. And if you bring it up now, you're seen as a conspiracy theorist, and that's fucking wrong. This is a real problem. We're not talking about it. And it makes me angry that they've been able to use this propaganda, because these are children.
Yes.
Children are being trafficked, are being used, this is not an acceptable thing that anybody should be okay with. It's just not. And they've managed to use Pizzagate to make you crazy if you even bring it up. And I'm over it.
Yeah. Another division tactic. It's the same. You can take just about any subject and see that is the baseline. That is the common denominator of all of it, is division. Is take something that you can create,
emotionally manipulate people.
Exactly. I was going to say emotionally charged, and use that against people and to divide them. Yes.
That's why they use issues like abortion and gun control, things that they can emotionally charge up to manipulate people. It's easier. And also fear-based issues like war. I say it all the time. On matters of war and Wall Street, we have one party. Period. Like they agree on all of that stuff. They use all of the other stuff, the emotional stuff, to divide us and to keep us so that they can do the war in Wall Street. You know what I mean? They want to do that, and they want you fighting about, and I'm not saying that like the argument over abortion rights or whatever, like, okay, we can have those conversations. Absolutely. But let's stop pretending like the people in power really give two shits, and that they're not just using it against us and propagandizing us against each other. And so it prevents us from having a legitimate conversation, because they, Fox News tells you that, leftists want to like murder babies and eat babies, and you know what I mean? And then MSNBC tells you that Fox News wants to control women, or that Republicans want to control women. And so you can't even have like a real conversation, because they have manufactured your reality and convinced you that you feel a certain way, and that the people who don't agree with you are evil, bad. You can't even have a conversation with them. Don't talk to them. And it's very effective.
It is. And all of these things are exactly why it's so much more valuable to spend your time working together with people towards a common goal. That in itself, point blank, like there's so many different ways that we are divided, and there's so much fighting and horrible things going on in the world. And what does fighting about it on the internet do? It literally does nothing. And perpetuating that sort of toxic culture, we're not going to get anywhere.
No.
Right. So I want to ask you, what is your position on capitalism in general? Because I hear and see this brought up a lot as a contention point between libertarians and non-libertarians, particularly those who call themselves leftists, that there's a discrepancy there, or disagreement there, as far as the acceptability or the viability of a capitalist economic system.
So once again, the ideology within like capitalism is, there's so many different, like there's anarcho, ancons, anarcho. So it's really tough. I can just speak for myself and what I think. I do think that free market can solve a lot of problems. There's a lot of people out there that think free market solutions can solve absolutely everything, and I'm not sure that in it. And I'm speaking in relation to a country of our size, maybe a very small country. If you can get everybody on board, sure. But there's a lot of people that say, like, here in the US, that people shouldn't.
Well, we need to break up the United States. I think that would solve a lot of problems too. We're too big. We're too big. we can't function. How can anybody expect one central government to, like if you're going to have that sort of a system, you need to break it down. That's not going to ever be all that effective. There's too many needs, and it's like, it's a clusterfuck. And because corporations are able to so easily buy our government, it becomes an even bigger clusterfuck because, then these people aren't even there to effectively run a country. They're there to effectively please corporate donors.
Yes, that's something that I have mentioned. It's like, especially corporations that are getting bailed out or getting subsidized. At what point do they simply become an extension of the state?
They are.
Right. Now there is a loophole that's being exploited where they're not held to the same regulations and whatnot as the government would be, because they're a private business. So I think that there's a lot of good that can come from privatizing, but there's also a lot of exploitation that comes from it. So it's really tough. I'm not by any means any sort of economic expert or an expert on capitalism, but I also think that certain issues are very, very deeply involved. And one of the things that I can talk about would be something like healthcare. And now, having privatized healthcare, will people say, like, for a typical libertarian thing is like, well, Medicare for all, the government shouldn't pay for our healthcare, it should be private. And to somebody that very vehemently supports Medicare for all, just saying, well, private option is better, and that's all that I say to you, well, that just makes me sound like an asshole that doesn't want people to be able to have healthcare. But when you look into it's a very, very involved thing where if you just look at the government regulations behind healthcare, you look at the regulations behind agencies like the FDA, and how much just arbitrary bullshit, even just paperwork, how many people are hired just to file paperwork.
Yeah.
And that's at every level in the healthcare industry. And why has it become the healthcare industry and not, the medical field? So it's that sort of where it trickles down, because you have all of these things. And even just think about how many things that they send out, and now you're paying somebody to stuff fucking envelopes, and then you're paying to mail them. So just costs like that, if you can cut costs within the healthcare system itself, then that could lower your plan, your policy. If you open up and make it able to buy policies across state lines, well, that would increase competition, which could drive down prices. And I say could because I don't know that it would, because, greed, I get it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, if we reduce taxes on people's paychecks, if you're getting more of that money in your pocket, and then healthcare policies cost less, you can have more of that money to buy the policy that you want and not have to worry about the government approving what procedures you can have done or what they'll pay for. So it's just something like that's a very, very basic explanation of how things could be just handled differently with a free market solution versus a government subsidized solution. And mind you, my husband is a veteran. He has healthcare through TRICARE still, and it's a fucking nightmare. And he had service-connected cancer and had to have it removed. And we got hit with the bill because they said, even though the surgeon called and got the approval, they told my husband it wasn't approved. Meanwhile, he's got fucking cancer. He had 2 surgeries within 10 days. And you really think this man is he ended up back in the hospital with complications with sepsis. He almost died. You really think that this is what he wants to be dealing with? And it was just it's because it's anything that the government touches, they fuck up. And that to me is really what makes me feel so passionate about it.
I think that's intentional though. That's intentional.
I do too. And my husband says all the time that he is pretty sure that they treat veterans in particular so poorly so that they will commit suicide, because it's cheaper to provide healthcare for a dead veteran than it is.
That's a really interesting theory. That's the first time I've ever heard that. And that just blew my mind a little bit, because think about it. I could see that. Yeah. That just hit me like a ton of bricks. Real talk.
Yeah.
Because I had seriously, I had never considered that, but now I'm going to be thinking about that for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at the statistics of how many
shouldn't laugh,
veterans,
but yeah.
no, I know, because it's so, it really, you
the
have to
fact that
laugh or
our
you'll
government,
cry.
the fact that our government is, and people will be like, oh, they wouldn't do that. Yes, they fucking would.
Yes,
Yes, they would.
They send these people to other fucking countries.
Yes.
For what reason?
Profit.
They damage their bodies and their minds and their fucking souls and bring them back home and then have to provide care for them, most often for the rest of their life. A lot of them go on disability. So that in itself is how many fucking billions of dollars that are getting paid out. So yeah, if you look at how many veterans kill themselves in the parking lot of a fucking VA hospital, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the government who sends them to war when they return home.
In their pockets.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
When they return home, they don't look at them as having gone through probably the worst trauma that a human being can go through.
Yeah.
They look at them as a disposal problem. And how do we get them off our backs in a way that doesn't impede our profit motive, our profit machine?
Well, I mean, look at what we're sending them to do. We're sending them to go like slaughter, murder a bunch of innocent people in third world countries to steal their natural resources. And so I mean, y'all, we are the terrorists. 100%. There has never been a larger terrorist organization than the United States of America, period. We are all over the globe fucking things up.
Yes.
I mean, I wish people could come to terms with that. I realize that that's a lot to take in, especially in this country, because you're propagandized from birth to think that the US is the good guy. If we do something, it's for the right reasons. You have to be patriotic. You have to buy into that whole, I'm proud to be an American, shit. And that's hard for people to take in, but I wish people could see that, because it's unbelievably disgusting what we do around the globe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even have words. I don't have words.
And now we have Congress investigating or questioning what happened in the last days of the US running away from Afghanistan, and in particular, the drone strike on the family. And nobody, I haven't seen anybody but Rand Paul asking serious questions of Antony Blinken. And I know Rand Paul has usually been quite good about that, about taking these
he has to be a disappointment to his father,
administrators to task for foreign policy, but it's nowhere near enough. And the silence from the other members of Congress, there are Republicans who are pushing back against Blinken and the Biden administration, but you can tell it's purely for show, and there's no critical analysis. There's no real world perspective on forever war that's informing their line of questioning. And it's frightening, it's upsetting, it's you name it.
They're so blasé. It's murder.
They're
murdered
complicit.
A whole family, 10 people, 7 children, and they whoopsied. They're like, oh, that was whoopsie daisy. Sorry about that. Our deepest sympathies. Fuck off. You just murdered a whole fucking family. You don't get to just whoopsie that. That's gross. And we do that all the time. Listen, Daniel Hale, if that pissed you off, if that drone strike pissed you off, then you need to go research Daniel Hale, because he told us a long time ago that our drone program is absolute garbage. It is like just 90% murder, straight up, just murder. You hit the wrong target. It's and we just let it, and then people are like, oh, we're pulling out of Afghanistan. Yay. We're moving to drone war.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And people are like, the war is over. No, it's not.
No.
The war's not over. It's just been like transformed into a drone war now and now there's going to be even less accountability, and nobody's going to pay attention because troops aren't there. So it's like, oh, you know what I mean? Like once the troops are gone, then it becomes invisible to people. And sorry, that was a little bit of a rant, but that shit pisses me off.
I agree. Part of my speech, so my speech was not recorded. I spoke for It felt like fucking forever. I probably gave a good like 20-30 minute speech at my rally, and it was 108 degrees and all of our devices kept shutting down, so nothing got recorded. But a lot of what I said was, it's not over. Like it's far from over. We're still in armed conflicts in like 5 other, not
At
just like
least.
regions that are comprised of multiple countries. So we're still in armed conflicts in multiple regions of the world. We are still in 2 or 3 other wars as we speak. It's not over.
We're occupying still
Yes.
multiple other countries.
Yes, like 8
we're helping
countries.
commit genocide in Yemen.
Yes.
We're funding Israel as they commit genocide on Palestine. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's
It's a nightmare.
No. And Afghanistan, what really pissed me off was when people said Afghanistan was over, like saying literally that Joe Biden ended a war. No, he didn't. Stop telling your audience that. It's really bad to do that. Because that helps people go back to sleep.
Yes, it does. And that was another point that I like to make, is that we need to keep this momentum going. Look at the budget request for the 2022 fiscal year, the fucking shopping list of billions and billions of dollars of weapons and fighter jets and warships and fucking nuclear submarines and missiles and surveillance systems, and how much of that money is going to Lockheed Martin and
contractors of all
Grumman
kinds.
And exactly. It's not over. That is not the shopping list of somebody that wants to stay at home.
Dude, they just gave Joe Biden 25 billion, not Joe Biden, but the military industrial complex. They just gave them an additional $25 billion on top of the $714 billion they were already giving them.
Yes.
And are you joking me? Are you joking me? Like, this is what we're spending our money on? Like, this is what pisses me off is,
731, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that's what
the defense budget.
It's unbelievable. They give him more than he asked for. Again, they give Trump more than he asked for.
Biden set what he called his top line initially for the military budget at $714 billion. And then the GOP said, we're not going to pass this unless we get an additional 25 billion. So bringing it up to about 740 billion. And that's still a low ball estimate, but there was a large contingent of Democrats within Congress who said, we're perfectly fine with giving the extra 25 billion because it's about getting the act done. It's about passing the budget. It's about showing that this administration has legitimacy because they were able to pass a military budget, regardless of what that budget contains and how much waste it involves. It was all about the optics. It's not about the financial aspect.
Well, they've done a really good job of doing the whole patriotism, support the troops. You have to, and so nobody questions military spending now. A lot of people are just like, yeah, of course we want to fund the military. You know what I mean? Like that's been kind of thoroughly ingrained in them since birth that we're a military country. We're a military country. We're a military. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, all that good stuff.
But there were Democrats saying outright, and they were quoted in the Times and the Wall Street Journal saying what I just said, essentially, that we need to get this passed because the administration has to show that it can pass a military budget for this fiscal year. And
Democrats are warmongers.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
And the repercussions of that, which are obviously going to be huge, they don't matter to them. It's about the optics, and the optics are about solidifying and maintaining their power, which is at threat right now with the primaries coming.
And there's instances where you hear about things that would have been passed under Trump, but they held off on it and they waited until Biden was sitting so that it looked good for the Biden administration. And we're the ones, or brown
It's all a
children on the other
show.
side of the world are fucking getting killed. And it's like, yeah, but they waited to
It's all
to
a
withdraw.
show.
Yes,
Listen,
it really all
people,
is.
oh,
I
okay.
know.
People really need to get this. It doesn't matter who is president. They don't hate Donald Trump. They use Donald Trump to play a role. He played his role. They they play off each other. Barack Obama didn't want to taint his legacy by arresting Julian Assange. So they saved it for somebody like Donald Trump. And they're all, it's like a thing. I get that sounds conspiratorial, but this is how they maintain power and control.
Yeah.
They really don't. If you think that they don't like Donald Trump or that he didn't do exactly as he was told for the most part, you're a fool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're all working on the same wavelength. Yes, there are some minor differences, and I'm sure that I liken it to high school for psychopaths. I'm sure there are some cliques, you know what I mean, where like certain groups get along with other groups better, but for the most part, they're all there working for the same, you know. Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell don't hate each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a show, like her ripping up Trump's speech and everybody's like, oh, Nancy Pelosi. So no, she's fucking playing a role. It's like a soap opera.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's entertainment. They do not hate each other like that. And a lot of people have bought into this team mentality where it's blue versus red. And, you know, you have to, it's come on.
It's us versus them.
Yes.
Period. That's all it is. If you look at how complicit Congress is in even just these wars, it's unconstitutional. Congress is there to limit the executive branch, and they just turn a fucking blind eye while the presidents make deals with NATO and, you know, behind their fucking backs, and Congress is just okay with that. There's no accountability, and it comes from the fucking top down. There's no accountability. How do we ever even? And one other point I wanted to make about spending is that all of that spending leaves us with surplus supplies, which, as we saw, a lot of it was left in Afghanistan, and now those weapons are making their way over to Israel. And furthermore, small town fucking police departments here in the US buy these surplus materials and weapons and vehicles and whatnot, and then use them against civilians. And we had a fucking glimmer of hope when the whole BLM thing blew up and everybody wanted to defund the police. And I'm like, yes. And here's why: that Bearcat that they're driving around to protect a fucking shopping mall from looters during a riot that's not even happening here in our state, that came from military fucking spending, and our little rinky-dink police department bought it at a fucking discount. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to be used against civilians. If that doesn't piss you off, if nothing but that pisses you off, join us, please.
Yes, please.
And
God,
let's not.
No.
Let's not forget how long this has been going on. Even if you want to go back to September 11, 2011 in Benghazi, what was Christopher Stevens doing there? He was helping funnel the weapons that had been seized from the deposed Gaddafi government through a rat line to Syria, to the US's Wahhabi proxies to try to take down Assad. And this is what we're seeing right now, as you just said, Lauren, with the weapons in Afghanistan that were left behind at bases like Bagram.
We just left them like helicopters and shit. The Taliban, who we've been like pretending is like this like existential threat, you know, and like, oh my, and then we just left them a bunch of like sophisticated weaponry and vehicles, and just here you go.
But they just like unplugged the batteries or disabled them in some way. It's fine.
And these are, but it's so frustrating because we arm, train, and fund all of these groups. We create these groups so that we have, like, sometimes we use them to our advantage, and then eventually we lose control of them or whatever, and then they become a problem. But it's all of our own making. All of this shit is of our own making. We've created our own nonsense around the world because we meddle in everything. Like, people you want to talk about Russian interference? Fuck out of here, dude. The United States interferes everywhere. I mean, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada, they might as well just be part of the United States. They're like our bitch. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous.
And how many foreign countries have bases in America?
None. Can you imagine if Russia even tried to put one anywhere near the United States, like in Canada?
Exactly.
It would be like World War III. It would
Exactly.
be, oh my God. Rachel Maddow would hyperventilate every night about Lord Putin. Lord Putin. You know what I mean? Like, dude, it's the hyperventilating over Russian interference when we're the United States of America. The hypocrisy of this country is so thick. It's almost impossible to like see through it. You know what I mean? It's so bad. The things that they try to like, they'll come out about press freedom, like World Press Freedom Day. Kamala Harris is tweeting about how, you know, press freedom is like the foundation of our democracy. Dude, Julian Assange. Has anybody ever heard of Julian Assange? Craig
You
Murray,
might know him.
Daniel Ham. You know, have you ever heard of? Are you? Oh, the hypocrisy, and people eat that shit up.
Yes.
I mean, like AOC and her tax the fucking rich dress. People ate that shit up. She's not taxing the rich.
No,
She's never going to do anything. She just went and like hung out with them at a party, like a $30,000 a plate party.
Yeah,
And
but she's starting a dialogue about women of color.
I'm so tired of
it's
the
okay.
moving the conversation thing. Fuck that. I'm done talking. Can we do something?
Yeah, that's the thing for me that is so upsetting. It's like, I would love, like Kamala Harris, I would love to support a woman of color being the vice president, but not a fucking statist
cop
piece of garbage. Yes, she's a cop.
She's a fucking cop.
Like imprisoned how many people of color and kept them there. Even
the shit that she did, slave labor, paying like prisoners like $1 a day to go fight fires, and then when they get out of prison, they can't like go get hired as a firefighter.
Right. Yeah. Because they're felons and they have records.
She was caught like keeping people in prison because she didn't want to hurt the state's labor force. I mean, she's a despicable human being. Like people, I remember when she, she wasn't elected. She didn't even get a single delegate. But when Biden got elected and dragged her along for the ride, because I have daughters, everybody's like, oh, or not everybody, but there were people who were like, oh, but now your daughters have like a person. No. I don't want my daughters to look up to Kamala Harris in any way. No. Just because she is like, is a female or is a woman or has a vagina or that
doesn't make her a good person.
No, she's terrible. She's a horrible person. There's no standard by which she,
I know,
you know, and you're right. Like, I would love to be able to support a woman of color. I would love to have somebody, you know, although honestly, if I'm being honest, there's no politician that I am ever really going to celebrate.
Sure. Right.
I hate all of them.
Right.
I mean, I think that I should be, you know, truthful.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk shit about all of them, more so about progressives, leftists, mostly just out of frustration because, you know, people still take them seriously for whatever the fuck reason. And it's annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that is a very valid point. And it's tough because, you know, these similarly with AOC or whatever. And if you don't love them, like you're a racist, misogynist. It's like, no, they're just shitty people. I'm sorry.
But they want to hide behind that identity politics. I keep saying that I can't wait to be in 2024. I can't wait to be gaslit about how this is the most important election of our lifetime. And so I have to vote for the cop and Boy Wonder Spook because she's a woman of color and he's gay. Because I call, what's his name? Pete Buttigieg, Boy Wonder Spook, because he's a McKinsey guy, right? Total CIA turd burglar. You know what I mean? Like this dude is manufactured as fuck. Kamala Harris is too. Is it Kamala or Kamala? I never know.
I thought it was Kamala.
Everybody says it differently, and so I don't know. But anyways, they're all very manufactured. Obviously, they're creepy. Like there's a almost like a audition tape for Kamala Harris, where it's you know AOC kind of auditioned to be a Justice Democrat. It really is. These aren't really like politicians. They're performers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So
which is creepy.
Lauren, to switch gears a little bit, what is your take on the vaccine mandates and passports that we're seeing increasingly forced upon us?
So I had touched on this the other night a little bit. I think it's one of those things where we still don't even know the efficacy of this vaccine. And that was made obvious by, you know, oh, well, if you're vaccinated, you know, the CDC says you don't have to wear a mask. And then they find out that vaccinated people are still getting and spreading it. So I think that they don't even know what the fuck is going on. So how can they instruct us on what to do when they don't even know what to do? They don't know. There's no concrete evidence. There's no numbers. It's all very, very new still. So how can you mandate something that we still don't even know exactly what it is or how safe it is or whatever? And the manufacturers can come out and say, well, you don't have a legitimate reason to say that you don't want to take this unless you're allergic to any one of the 5 ingredients. And that's the only excuse that they will recognize as being a legitimate excuse for not wanting to take it. Not, you know, I have a genetic mutation and I don't know what an mRNA vaccine, I don't know. I don't do science. I'm not a science guy. I don't understand exactly how mRNA works. And I'm not just going to take something at face value when they say, no, it's safe for everybody. We don't know that. It's only
and they're known liars.
Right. If you look at Chantix, the recall on Chantix for causing cancer, you look at Johnson and Johnson.
Many examples.
Yeah. Johnson and Johnson putting cancer-causing agents in fucking sunblock and talc powder, baby powder.
Yeah.
It's shampoo. So, and furthermore, the CDC, which is the same, or, you know, evolved from the entity that did things like the Tuskegee experiment. Mm-hmm. You think like, I know it sounds very tinfoil hat, but I don't trust it. And I'm not saying that other people shouldn't. That's your prerogative.
Right.
But for me and for you and for everybody else and for their children, it should be an option. If you want to take it, great, take it. You should have. And I believe that medical freedom goes both ways. If you want to try an experimental drug, you should have the right to try that.
Yeah.
If you don't want to take even a known proven cure or what or medication, you shouldn't be forced to take it. It should be and same thing with abortion. If that's the route that you decide to take your medical freedom, that's your choice. I don't think it should be mandated. And people say, oh, well, you know, vaccines have always been mandated to go in school, but those are vaccines that have been around for 30 years. And there are not mRNA vaccines, which I'm sorry, to me, it's just, this is the first one that's ever been used for humans. And that, as somebody that has a genetic mutation, scares the fuck out of me. I have a lot of really serious health problems. And for me, I could die just getting the vaccine. I go into anaphylactic shock randomly. I could die at any time. And I've had people tell me that I was selfish and I should just risk taking the vaccine and dying for the good of my community.
The greater good.
The greater good.
The greater good.
When did anybody else in my community ever give a fuck about my health until the last year? Nobody cares. And that's fine. I don't want anybody to care. I'm handling my shit. But like, people are able to make their own decisions. Yes. And furthermore, the thing that really pisses me off as somebody that is immunocompromised, I hate being used as a bargaining chip. Yes. Stop telling people that they need to get something that they don't want to get for people like me. I personally would never want somebody to take something that they don't want to take because it's their body. And my health is not your responsibility. And it's not the government's responsibility. It's on me.
Yeah, like I agree with that. Like, I think that if if it were necessary, like if this was like and I'm not like trying to minimize COVID or anything like that.
Right.
But I think that there's a lot of nuance here that isn't being discussed about how, you know, we could have just vaccinated maybe the most vulnerable, the elderly, whatever. But here's the thing. Here's really what it boils down to is you cannot force anybody to put something in their body. That's not an okay thing that you should be able to do under any circumstances. And people will be like, oh, but you know, if that person doesn't get vaccinated, okay, then it's your job to convince them. And here's how you don't convince somebody: lie to them over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Like I say this all the time. How many times does your government get to lie to you before your sense of skepticism kicks in? When you lie that often, people, of course, there are going to be people who don't believe you.
Right.
You know, of
Right.
course, and these are known liars. This
Yes.
isn't like a conjecture. This isn't like, me being overly dramatic. They've lied about, and wars. They've lied about COVID. How many times? Fauci has been busted lying numerous times, changing his position. They changed the definitions of words to fit their narrative, to fit their agenda. Of course, there are going to be people. And so to me, I think a lot of energy is spent being angry at those who are skeptical and hesitant. And I don't even like those words really, because it feels very cliche, but those people have just cause to be wary about their fucking government, and especially how forceful they're being. That's a red flag.
Yes.
And how
Coercive.
fast it is. Yeah. It's very like, this is, of course, it's okay to be skeptical about this. Anybody trying to make you feel like a bad person, or literally calling you a murderer, or saying that you're selfish, or that like, oh, we should just we should just shoot you if you don't want to get vaccinated, then we should just shoot.
If it saves just one life, except for yours, I hope you die for not getting it.
That's ridiculous.
That's the craziest part about it.
Yeah. And this is a vaccine that doesn't even yes, maybe it will help prevent like a more serious version of the illness. Okay, I'll give you that. But maybe, maybe
we don't know.
But you can still get it. You can still pass it along. And so if the only thing it's protecting is you and how bad you might react to being sick, then that's a very personal choice that should be left to the individual. Not that it shouldn't be anyway, but for sure, when the only person being affected is the person who's going to be getting sick, you don't get to make that call for me. You do not. And you certainly don't get to tell me that I have to get my children vaccinated.
Yes.
Fuck off. And I say this all the time. I just want to make this clear. There is absolutely zero way anybody could ever label me as anti-vax. I was in the throes of an anti-vax, or the combat against anti-vaxxers. I made a list in 2015 of people that anti-vaxxers do not like. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. Stop telling me that I am. That's not true. I am fully vaccinated. My children are fully vaccinated.
But you made the choice.
Yes. On this vaccine, being skeptical about a vaccine that has just, been rushed through and pushed through and hyped up. And, all of these things are coming out after the fact about how it affects women's menstrual cycles, or how it gives young men heart problems. So stop it. Just stop it. It's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to be hesitant. It's okay to wait to get the vaccine and to make that choice for yourself. And I'm so sick of these zealots trying to force this shit on people. It's gross.
Yes, I agree. And if I can chime in really quickly, as somebody that is immunocompromised and I have heart problem, everything, you name it, I've probably got a problem with it. And for me, having lived this way my entire life, I live very carefully. I wash my hands to the point where I have no fingerprints left, basically. I take precautions. I have always distanced myself. If I was in a store and I heard somebody hacking up a lung, guess what? I didn't stand next to them. And that's how I've always lived my life. And even though I am an immunocompromised person, I very rarely get sick because I've taken those precautions and I'm responsible for my own health. And in those instances when I did get sick, even if it was just a simple cold, I stayed home because I don't want to pass that on to somebody else. It's very, very fucking easy to just have common sense about it. And I'm not trashing, once again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer either. I think if you want to do it, great. I fully support somebody's choice, but we need to be making informed choices, and choice is the operative word there, that it needs to be a choice.
And we need to be honest about what that choice means. Don't tell me that, if you get vaccinated, then you're going to they're making it out to be like that. If you do that, then you're going to be safe. And you're that's not the case.
And you're going to be awarded some of your freedoms back.
Yeah. And that's not the case. They're still taking away freedoms. They're still, it doesn't matter. And really, it's not even that look at the Met or whatever, or the Emmys. There's these mass gatherings of of rich people and the only people wearing masks are servants.
Right.
That should be a red flag to you. That
Yes.
should be a red flag to you. You know,
Yes.
like that's the way that they've been able to manipulate this.
It's
you know,
creating a classism. It really is.
yes, and it's otherizing.
Yes.
You know, again, they're pitting us against each other.
Yes. And one thing you had also asked about, Jesse, was the vaccine passports, which at this point, knowing what we know and how the vaccine's efficacy seems to be waning over time, the numbers are showing this. Reports have come out saying that, yeah, it's seeming like people will need boosters. What's the point then?
Right.
If it needs to be like how, because they're only, and I actually posted something about this on Twitter the other day, where they're only mandating people to get tested if they're unvaccinated, even though we know for a fact that people who have received the vaccine can still get and carry a very similar, if not the same viral load as people who are unvaccinated and can spread it just as easy. Why is it that only the unvaccinated have to get tested, or only the unvaccinated aren't allowed to eat in a restaurant? It makes no sense, because if now these people are going to a venue where, okay, I've got my vaccine passport, I'm good to go, they could be sick. And then all of these other vaccinated people who don't have, are maybe not wearing a mask, or you go to a restaurant where you can't eat with a fucking mask on, people are taking their masks off, and you have one person who was vaccinated but happened to be sick. Well, now all of these other people can get sick from that one person. And yet it's people who have chosen not to get vaccinated. It's their fault. So it's creating a classism.
All of it's very arbitrary.
It is.
Too. It's all very, because I remember when COVID first started, I wasn't really sure. Like, I didn't want to like jump to conclusions. I wasn't really sure what was going on. So I was like kind of like feeling it out for a while. But I remember one of the first times that I realized that this was like just a lot of bullshit was, I don't remember which team it was. I think it might've been the Saints. But there was an NFL game and they played the game, they won. And then they were celebrating in their locker room without masks, and they got fined like a bunch of money. And I'm like, they just played a full contact sport for 3 hours, like in each other's faces, sweating and breathing and spitting and like trash talking each other and spit flying everywhere. And that was fine. But then they go in their locker room and they cheer without masks, and and I was like, okay, really? And it's just silly. And there's like instances of that across the board where it's just the most arbitrary and ridiculous rules that they come up with. Like, you know, Nancy Pelosi being able to host some luncheon and nobody's wearing masks, and that's fine. And Gavin Newsom can go out to dinner, but
only the servers have to wear masks once again.
But we can't leave our houses, and we have to shut down the world, and we have to, you know, so yes, that raises my suspicions. Of course it does.
I think we have to look at it in a larger frame as well, in that the American empire, Pax Americana, is failing. It's falling apart. And we're seeing that with what's happened in Afghanistan. And the ruling class wants nothing more, as it always does, to hold on to its power. And there is a way for them to consolidate their power and hold on to that through what's happening with COVID and the vaccines. And so it's not so much, I think, about COVID and the vaccines. Those are being used as set pieces, if you will, to consolidate the control over us, to create a two-tier society. Biden, in his last statements about COVID, said that this is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Ugh. So it is about separating us for their consolidation of power, and the consolidation of power for global capitalism, for big pharma, for these huge corporations that are already profiting off of this. Like Moderna stock went up multiple hundreds of percent.
Made so much money. And if you can't see, like, here's what pisses me off. If you can't see why this is a problem of Joe Biden saying that it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated, when they haven't done shit otherwise to help, like other countries, and you can feel whatever way you want to feel about lockdowns or whatever, but if they were serious about, like, they haven't done anything, they less than nothing, like they've done less than Trump. Joe Biden's done less than Trump to help people through the pandemic. They offered no, all they're saying, just get vaccinated, that'll solve the problem. First of all, no, that's not going to solve the problem. Second of all, you need, like, that can't be your only approach to a pandemic. Like it's just, so the fact that it really bums me out that the American people have, like, convinced themselves that this is the best that they deserve. It's really sad. We deserve so much more than we are getting. Are you kidding? All of your labor that you put in, like, most people like right now have to work like 2 or 3 jobs, 70 hours a week just to survive. You deserve better than that. Billionaires, they're shoveling money to billionaires right now. The CARES Act, are you joking? Like, they couldn't be shoveling money away faster. They're stealing it from you. They're giving it to the top 1%. Jesse's right. They're absolutely taking over. They're buying up all the houses. Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland. You know, this is a problem. Nestle's taking over all the water. This is a problem. They're distracting you with bullshit and then literally taking everything from us. We're going to be fully dependent on them for everything at some point. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to consolidate power of information. That's what they're doing with Julian Assange. There's, you know, I say one of my favorite sentences in the whole world, because it is the truth, is that the United States is seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism. They're doing this across the board. And they're because they're able to distract us, they're getting away with it. And, you know, I don't know what to do about that. And it's really difficult, because really the only thing that we can do is try to fight back against the narrative by, like, having conversations like this. But then there's censorship, and then you have people cheering the censorship, and it's like, what is happening?
Yes. Yeah. It makes you wonder, at what point will people realize that it's not about the greater good, it's about control. I mean, these politicians have flat out said, we are going to, being nice hasn't worked. We've tried the nice approach. We've tried asking, and I'm tired of it, blah, blah, blah. Like, that, to me, I perceive that as a threatening tone. Like, they're making good on that promise to inconvenience people and to essentially punish them for not complying. And that is not about public health. That's about control, period.
Yes. It's scary. It's really scary.
And people use the term Orwellian a lot, but I think in this case, it really applies when Biden gave those statements. And the last thing he said, as he leaned into the microphone, he whispered, "Get vaccinated."
Yeah, he's so creepy.
So fucking creepy, dude.
He's so creepy. My friend Jesse Jett does music and spoken word and all that stuff. And he, like, there's a song that he sampled Joe Biden on. And it's honestly, like, it's a great song, but it's difficult to listen to because it's like whispering in your ear, and he's such a creepy fuck, y'all. I honestly do not know how a man who is on camera that many times being physically inappropriate with children was able to be elected to the presidency of the United States. To me, that is really disturbing. He is, like, grossly physically inappropriate with young girls on camera numerous times, women too, but to be that brazen about it and to feel that comfortable doing it on camera.
Yes.
What is he doing behind the scenes?
Yes.
What is he doing behind? I mean, he is one of the creepiest dudes. I mean, honestly, he is a really despicable character. I cannot, they're all pretty gross, like Kamala, whatever, and her creepy laugh. Like, that's called Duper's Delight. It's like a psychological thing that, like, psychopaths do. When they are lying to you and they think they're getting away with it, they find that, like, they can't help but, like, giggle or laugh or smile. So yeah, like, you'll see a lot of murderers will do that. Like, the what's his name, the Family Annihilator guy, Chris Watts. So he's like, if you watch the interview with him on the porch, he, like, smiles as he's talking about his missing wife and children, because he thinks he's getting away with something. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that. I'm a true crime nerd, so
same. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Okay, good. There's a lot going on in the true crime world right now. Woo!
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Don't get me started.
Petito.
Yes. So I think
Terrible.
actually, like, her family is from the same town that I grew up in.
Really?
Yes. And if I may go off on a little bit of a tangent about that, I think it's great that we're talking about a woman being, possibly abducted, missing, murdered, whatever. But I also think that we really need to talk about how often this actually does happen. There's something like 6,000 missing and murdered Indigenous women that one statistic I read said that Indigenous women are like 10 times more likely to be murdered.
Yeah.
And 1 in 3 Indigenous women are victims of sexual assault. So like there's this shit happens all the time. And I'm really glad that this case blew up and it's gaining a lot of traction. But we need to talk about how
all the
often
others.
of the other.
I tweeted about this earlier because Jesse and I have
trans women and
yes, Jesse and I have done a couple of shows on missing and murdered Indigenous women. In fact, it was like was it the first thing we did?
Yeah.
I think it was the first thing like we agreed on to tackle. And we need to do some more shows on it. But I tweeted about this earlier because and I don't mean it to sound disrespectful to this victim's family. I don't. Yes. I'm really happy that they got attention and that they were able to get some kind of a potentially, I mean, we still don't know specifics yet, but very likely there's been at least they know where she is now, very likely. There's a whole, but at the very least they got the attention that they needed to like at least start on that path. A lot of these cases get zero attention, none. Like maybe if they're lucky they get like a paragraph in their local newspaper. And if I can't imagine what we could do, especially with the growth of the true crime community online. Because that's a YouTuber is essentially what helped potentially solve this case. There was a family filming and happened to be where their van was, and so they were able to then locate the body. So I mean that the fact that we have the internet could be like a legitimately awesome tool for that kind of stuff, and the true crime community has grown so much. And Michelle McNamara helped. I don't want to say she solved it, but she helped to solve the Golden State Killer to get more attention brought on it. So, I mean, it's just, yes, I'm very happy that, I'm not happy that they got the news that they're probably going to get. Again, we don't know if it's at the time of this taping, we don't know for sure that it's her body, but it's very likely her body. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they're going to potentially see some resolution, but you're right. There's not enough attention put on cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women, or Black women go missing. Constantly trans women are missing and murdered. And it would be nice if we could get just some attention on those cases.
Like let's normalize talking about it, because it happens way often than we even know. And to your point, because it doesn't make the news very often, that as tragic as this incident was, it really is eye-opening to say like, holy shit, this made national news. This is huge. We need to keep that momentum going. I also feel similarly about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. As horrific as it was, it brought a lot of people's attention to the issue that why the fuck are we still in Afghanistan after 20 years? So it's a similar thing where you still want to keep that momentum going, where it's like, okay, this is in our forefront. Now let's look at all of the other problems that have been going on for how long. And people are just now starting to really sort of pay attention to these particular issues.
Yeah. But I mean, I have kind of seen, because I am kind of a true crime nerd, I have seen that a lot of true crime content creators have like made a visible, noticeable shift towards covering some more of those cases. At least the people I watch, I've noticed there's been more of an effort. Before, it was very rare that you would see like an MMIW case on a true crime channel or whatever. But yeah, it would be so great to be able to like utilize that community in a constructive way, because there's a lot of families who are desperately waiting for resolution. And I think a lot of it is also to cops not wanting to like hand over like control of and credit for solving a case, because it makes them look bad because they didn't solve it. You know what I mean? I think there's some of that a lot too. They try. Sure. I mean, I forget her name, but there's a girl, Jennifer Kesse. They didn't want to like hand over information to her family. And I think it was just, they felt it looks bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a PR nightmare to
Yeah.
admit that you couldn't solve a case or whatever. So I think there's a lot of that, but yeah, it would be cool to be able to utilize that community more for stuff like this, and not just for, you know, pretty white blonde girls.
Right.
No, again, no offense
Right.
to that.
Right.
She absolutely deserves the coverage too. But we need to recognize that it's not, you know.
Yeah, and as we all know, the media, especially the mainstream media, they focus on these stories particularly because they're sensational and they're sexy, and they get viewership, they get ratings, they get advertisers, and
it's commodifying.
Right. It's
murder.
It's commodifying murder, commodifying tragedy. And I think that we probably will see a big shift toward an independent online community participating in the investigation of such cases, because it almost seems at this point like it has to happen, because anytime one of these stories comes up, like the Petito story or the Natalie Holloway story, for example, it's the only one that's focused on for however long the focus is, you know, profitable. And it makes you think like it's the only one happening in the world, and it only happens to young women who travel to Aruba on spring break or whatever.
It is very interesting how the psychology behind how like an entire globe can become fascinated with one case. And that's like an interesting phenomenon, you know what I mean? Because that's like Madeleine McCann. There's been like certain situations where it's like an entire globe, not literally, but you know, like it's a global case where everybody is like watching and like obsessed with it. OJ, Scott Peterson, like there's like these big, it's weird how there's like these big, like just certain ones become like really iconic. That's an interesting, I would like be interested in like trying to figure out the psychology behind that and what makes that kind of mass obsession. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was actually just, so we haven't recorded, we've taken a break, but I do a true crime podcast as well. And something that to me, I think that creates these sort of more sensationalized stories. I think a lot of it is people seeing something that they can relate to. So, you know, having a young daughter, or, you know, just anything, or even just a pregnant woman being murdered, like, oh, that's a mom, that's like there's one weird niche thing that makes this particular crime seem so much more egregious than others. But I've covered cases that are not really well-known cases, and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I never heard about this like super prolific serial killer. But it was because all of his victims were Black sex workers, and nobody gave a fuck, or they were all gay men, and the cops back then didn't want to talk about gay men. So I think it's more like there's so many other cases that get buried because it's not. And I also use this word because it is what the media does. They make these things like sexy, or they make them very like, you know, they market it essentially, and it's disgusting. And I think that does happen way more often because there's so many other cases that are just swept under the rug, simply because people just don't care enough about the victims because they can't relate to them, or they think that they were throwaways in society.
Yeah, that's very true. That's why serial killers, generally speaking, seek out those marginalized groups that, you know, like sex workers or runaways or whatever, because they're less likely to be missed. And serial killers are very smart.
Right.
You know, they know how to get away with their shit. So that's what and that's how they're so effective. You know,
for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I honestly, before I started doing these kinds of shows, I thought about doing a true crime show, because I'm not even kidding you. I am obsessed. Like, I've been obsessed since I was a little girl. Like, I remember being like 8 or 9, asking my mom to buy me a book about serial killers. And I can't imagine what my poor mother must have been thinking when her like 8 or 9-year-old daughter is like, can I have a book about serial killers?
Like, holy shit.
Yeah. She
start sometime.
She handled it well. Like, she got me the book, but I can't, like, she must have been like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, is she just like interested in this, or is like this a thing?
Is this for the McDonald's triad? I don't know.
Yeah. But I was a pretty like well-adjusted kid, generally speaking. So I think she was probably like realized it was okay. But yeah, that must have been a little like you know, I can't.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, if my kid did it, like they've been watching true crime with me since they were wee little, so it makes sense. But yeah, I've been obsessed since I was a little girl. So I thought about doing a true crime show before I did this, and I should maybe just do one. It would be fun.
Yeah, listen, if you need a partner in true crime, let me know.
Heck yeah, Fiorella too. I don't know if you know who Fiorella is. Fiorella Isabel from Combo Couch.
I don't. You guys had mentioned her when I joined you on the last.
She's amazing.
Show.
I bet you would like her. The Combo Couch is great. I bet you'd love Combo Couch. Yeah, they're awesome. You should check them out. They really kind of started as election integrity activists.
Okay.
Well, they were like into the Bernie stuff in 2016, saw how he got screwed, and then that's why they kind of started doing shows and stuff like that to examine. But yeah, they're amazing. But she's into true crime too, so we could have like a whole little ass network.
I love it.
I know, right? That'd be fun. Anyways, we've taken up a lot of your time.
It's okay.
we tend to do that. Sorry about that. Do you want to tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter and all the stuff that you have going on or coming up?
Oh, sure. So my personal Twitter is @Lauren_Liberty_, and mostly I just kind of do some liberty shit posting. Sometimes I'll put like I was doing this thing where I was doing like thirst traps against tyranny, and I would post like slutty pictures and like fuck the government sort of things. So, I try to keep it interesting. And then I do the socials for the Arizona Libertarian Party. So if anybody's in Arizona, you want to link up, even if you're not necessarily libertarian, I think I have made it abundantly clear that I am willing to work with people that have common goals, as long as you're chill and you're not just trying to fight. Cool. Reach out to me. The AZLP is Arizona_LP on Twitter, and then azlp.org. You can always email us through there too. So, and
cool.
Just thanks so much again for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Like thanks for coming on.
I'm a big fan of having these conversations.
Yeah.
Just with anybody and everybody who can have common cause. And so if you're willing to organize an End the Damn Wars protest, then we should link up and work together on that shit, because ending the wars is pretty damn important. So it was good to talk to you. We'd love to have you back on anytime. Thanks everybody for watching. And I guess we'll just catch you next time. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks.